Welcome to Channel's Business Globe with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. Coming up on today's show, Conservative leader Femi Badenoch faces a fight for survival after a bruising party conference, with party morale at an all-time low and speculation swirling about her future. I'll be speaking with our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey about what comes next. And the Femi Otedola Book Club, hosted by the Motherland Hub, where young leaders explored his memoir, Making It Big. The conversation connected Otedola's lessons of resilience and reinvention with the entrepreneurial journeys of a new generation. Then later, highlights from the Nigeria-Britain Association's Independence Day celebrations here in London. The evening brought together business leaders, cultural figures and diplomats to mark 65 years of Nigeria's nationhood in style. But first, Conservative leader Femi Badenoch is under intense pressure after a bruising party conference that has left her struggling to maintain authority. At the heart of the discontent are her tough new immigration proposals, which she insists are essential to restore voter trust. But instead of uniting the party, the measures have deepened divisions, with some MPs calling them unworkable and others warning they risk driving moderate voters away. The unease was laid bare in the conference hall itself, where empty seats and frosty receptions reflected a party in turmoil. And with the latest polling putting the Conservatives on just 17% behind both Labour and Reform UK, questions about Badenoch's leadership are growing louder. Well, to discuss the fallout and whether she can hold the party together, I was earlier joined by our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey. Simon, finally, party conference season is coming to an end. This week it was the turn of the Conservatives, and to be fair to Femi Badenoch, she did pretty well in her speech on Wednesday. It did go down quite well. What's your assessment of it?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of party conference season, the fear was for the Conservatives that they were going to be the completely forgotten, ignored, irrelevant. And early on in the party conference, I think there were quite a few events that were cancelled because there were so few people in the hall. But you're right, huge, rousing speech, big headline-grabbing figures, and the headlines today and in recent days have all been positive ones, which I think for the Conservatives has been a long time coming, and Femi Badenoch especially. And she has people circling around her, Robert Jenrick, who's obviously vying for leadership. But all of this seems to have disappeared for the moment anyway, because of a big stamp duty announcement, which means anyone buying a house won't pay stamp duty on it. She's saying that's going to get the economy moving, that's going to get social migration moving a little bit more. There's going to be more cohesiveness within the housing market. It's going to free up things. And many other announcements likewise. Where she's going to get the money from, that doesn't matter at the moment. She just wants attention. She wants Conservatives to be back in the conversation.
Yeah. And serious grown-up talk.
Yeah, first-time house buyers are going to get a leg up. There's talk of national insurance being cut. They're going to stop the VAT on private schools. It's real sort of conservatism stuff, like your sort of true blue Margaret Thatcher stuff. And I think what she's realised is that most of the speech was on the economy, was getting the economy moving.
Reform
was
can't do
buying.
that.
Exactly. So she's realised that she can't really play the illegal migration card. Reform have got that wrapped up. She can't do the NHS. That's what the Labour Party have got. What she's got is the economy. That's what the Tories traditionally have been strongest at, and that's what they are still thought of as being much
serious
more.
Party.
Yeah, they're thought of as being sort of fiscally responsible, despite the Liz Truss episode. People seem to, and then Robert Jenrick was a slight spoke in the wheel the day before. He was making a speech.
He's shadow justice, is he?
He's shadow justice, and he's obviously wants to be party leader, and he makes no real secret of that. But I think she gave a passing comment of him talking about it's good you're catching, fare dodgers. It was like one line, and it was a bit of a joke, and it was a bit of a back in your box at the moment. I'm not done yet, love, kind of thing. And so I think, there was huge, rapturous applause.
Yeah.
I think it is very different, isn't it, as we've seen with the Labour Party, who she said they had a plan to get into power, but no plan once in power. It's easy when you're in opposition to make noises, and they just need to get back to basics, I think, and they need to be part of the conversation, because for the last 6-12 months it's all been the rise of reform over the summer, Labour have done little
Basically,
to nothing.
Kemi's been forgotten about, hasn't she?
Yeah, and I think Conservatives have, because when you've got a new right-wing party coming in, well, there's no room for the Conservatives. And over the summer, the only thing people have been talking about is small boat crossings and how they're going up and how illegal migration is going up and migration in general is going up. The Labour Party have done little to nothing to quell that conversation. Yeah. And so there's been a huge space for Nigel Farage to move into. So it's refreshing in a way, and it's odd to say that of the biggest and oldest political party in the world, that they're back and that they seem to have got their mojo back. And it'll be interesting to see in the next few weeks where they go with this, because no one's really counting the cost. They're not saying where's this money going to come from, almost because they don't think this is going to come to pass. So it'll be interesting to see if she can build on this in PMQs and in the weeks to come leading into Christmas, whether they can get any momentum to start to become back in the political picture.
The second party. I've got to ask very briefly about her personality. I don't want to, but we do live in a personality politics era. There was a pretty awkward interview she had with one of your colleagues, Beth Rigby. I don't want to use the trope angry black woman. I'm a black woman who can be angry sometimes. But sometimes she does come across quite defensive. I'm sure you've heard all the headlines in Nigeria. She's teed off a lot of people there from the president down. Is she a likable person?
I think that's quite a hard... she wants to come across as probably being a Thatcher, strong woman, doesn't take any nonsense.
Yeah, that was in the 80s. Does it work now, then?
Well, I think, and
you need public support. Wasn't that Rishi's downfall?
Well, I mean, you look at the politicians we have now, really only Nigel Farage is the one who has any kind of personal appeal. Sir Keir Starmer certainly doesn't.
Didn't work for Andy Burnham. He thought it would, didn't he?
Yeah, well, you have your politicians with charisma. She certainly has that. Okay. I think you're right. I think she maybe does need to dial it down a little bit in terms of the aggression towards, legitimate questions from journalists who, if she's going to get into power, she's going to get a lot more of that.
Yes.
So she needs to maybe play her cards a little bit smarter when it comes to, showing a little bit more humour. And there's various ways you can bat away questions or sidestep, or and you look at Boris Johnson was a master at it. Yes. You can sort of deflect, and you don't have to come back straight back at them and appear to be sort of
arguing,
nasty and flustered and exactly mean. So that's maybe something that she needs to work on a little bit. But I think she showed with this speech that she certainly has it
was excellent
within her arsenal to move tact, to change course. Because I think a couple of months ago she'd be talking about immigration and she'd be talking about culture politics a lot more, which is
scandal within the Labour Party.
Right, exactly. Whereas now I think she's going back to basics, looking at conservative issues, especially the economy, and I think that's where she needs to fight the next election off.
Yeah. Now to a literary spotlight with strong business undertones. Billionaire investor Femi Otedola recently released his memoir Making It Big, a book that blends his personal journey with practical lessons on resilience, reinvention and legacy. To mark the launch, Motherland Hub hosted a special book club edition here in London at the Africa Centre, bringing together young entrepreneurs and change makers from Africa and the diaspora. The gathering explored Otedola's lessons through the lens of a new generation, from weathering storms and mastering reinvention to building businesses from small beginnings. The discussion was lively, with participants sharing how Otedola's story resonates with their own experiences, particularly the challenges of balancing ambition with well-being and the courage it takes to pivot in difficult times. The event, filmed especially for Channel's Business Global, underlined how one of Africa's prominent business leaders is inspiring the next generation of future leaders.
I was instantly transported back to a context that I'm very familiar with, which is one of community, one of cooperation, a very distinct context to what I've come to be exposed to since I've moved to the UK. So the reason why I think the Nigerian context is important is because if we don't have a truly representative story, then you end up taking things from other parts of the world that aren't necessarily to your benefit. I think the warmth that Baba showed us while we were waiting in the lobby is something that I would love to have from sort of people here in the UK that I don't often have. And it's just that understanding, it's the beneath human interaction that you're able to get. And that's something that I've come to expect from a lot of situations in Nigeria. But more on the industrialist, it's the scale. So coming back to the book, I wasn't thinking he's a billionaire, how can I relate to this story? But I was thinking, how can this book be relevant to the average Nigerian entrepreneur? And it's simple, it's in the subtext. It's lessons from a life in business. Mm-hmm. There's very, very tangible and practical lessons in this book that aid you both from a personal level, on a financial level when you're dealing with sort of your finances in your company, personal level when you're dealing with your employees, strategy level when you're coming to understanding the industry that you're in and how you get the best out of that industry. There's so many compelling insights about areas that he's done well, which we're also happy to share, but then also areas that he's not quite got it right. And I think that visibility on what business is in a very, very relatable context is one of the key reasons that I think the Nigerian context in this book in particular is resonates so much with me, and it's quite important.
What I love about books as well today is basically getting a mentor. You're basically being mentored by some people who you don't have access to, whether that's through podcasts, books, and so many people are like, I need to find now you've got a book from a billionaire who can tell you his secrets, his struggles, who can let you know, actually, yeah, you are going to hit rock bottom here. But there is a time where you're going to, need to just kind of push through it. So, yeah.
I remember when my first week in postgraduate school here, I realized that our teacher was like, we need contextual, nuanced solutions on the continent. And this was in an extracurricular thing I took called PFAL, Program for African Leadership. And she was like, here the system is, it doesn't matter your age. You walk in, you tell someone to do a task, even if they are 10 years older than you, they do it. In Nigeria, if you don't want to be frustrated, you don't just say, do this with the, I'm the boss. Chances are you'll get frustrated, whatever it is you want to get solved will not be solved, and your staff will act like they don't know anything about what you've said. So I think it's important because you get to see, like I would always say, Nigerians have grit and resilience, and it's always important to see that mirrored, especially in a system that is growing, because we don't have all the infrastructure. Like he mentions in his book, there are a lot of gaps and inefficiencies, and it's very important in a system where you think, oh, everybody already has a slice of the pie. When you notice that there are gaps, how do you plug into those gaps? And I think it is important for people to have those examples.
But the more and more we learn, the more and more I learn about what are people saying who have actually done the things that I want to do, or done similar things to what I want to do, even if I have some disagreements with them. I want to learn from their own perspectives. I want to, for different brief moments, see things from different people's eyes, and come back to myself and say, okay, how can I apply all these different things to what the things that I want to do, things that we all want to achieve. And I mean, what's really exciting about him? We were talking earlier before the cameras came up that he doesn't give many interviews. He's one of the most mysterious business leaders. He doesn't give press conferences. I think I've watched one or two interviews he's given in probably the last 3 decades. So when he released this book, he hasn't even done an interview after saying, oh, this is my book, please buy it. He's just posted it. That's it. Like, buy if you want to buy, or don't buy it. And that to me kind of draws me in more. Fine, let me learn. Let me see if there are things here to learn from. And there are quite a lot of things,
I think particularly in Nigeria, one of our largest exports is the cultural power. And if you take this book and you take what Mr. Otedola is talking about when he talks about how he navigates political relationships or familiar relationships, and the way he's able to glean insight or nuance, and how he's able to get more out of situations than you typically would, because he understands the culture and the context of the rooms that he's in. And I'll take, for example, Topicals, my skincare brand. We were the first brand to take a brand trip, so taking influencers to the continent of Africa. Particularly, we went to Ghana. We've now also been to Lagos. But we were the first brand to ever do that. And that brand trip probably reset the industry around what brand trips look like. We took Black and brown creators who don't typically get invited by other major brands, by major brands, and we took them to Accra. And I remember talking to my board about wanting to do this, and they were confused. I remember talking to my team about wanting to do this. None of them had been to West Africa.
You're watching Channels Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from Westminster. Coming up after the break, more reflections from the Femi Otedola Book Club as young leaders share the lessons they live by. And later, we'll bring you highlights from the Nigeria-Britain Association's Independence Day celebrations here in London. Welcome back to Channels Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. We begin this part of the programme with highlights from the Nigeria-Britain Association's Independence Day celebrations here in London. The event brought together diplomats, business leaders and cultural figures for an evening of networking, music and reflection on 65 years of Nigeria's nationhood.
Yeah, it's a Nigerian-Britain Association. It's an association formed in 1969. It's an association, the offshoot is from Britain, actually, and that His Royal Highness Prince Philip was a patron. And so it's more like having a relationship, a collaborationship, a friendship association between Nigerians and Britons. So in order to have that integration with Nigerians, there's kind of a friendship association. Basically, it's a friendship association between Nigerians and the Britons. But now we have extended it beyond to Commonwealth countries.
At 65, I want to believe that we haven't quite got where we should be at 55. And I'm hoping very much that we've recently started the journey to the new home, and that would take us a shade nearer where we want to be.
I'm a very proud Nigerian myself, British Nigerian I say, but my heritage is very important to me. The Nigerian in my DNA keeps me going, and for me, I'm here to make a statement to any other young Nigerian in the UK living in diaspora that you can achieve, that there are opportunities for you as long as Mr. President has mentioned, you're resilient, you're hardworking, you're determined, and you know what you want in life. For me, I've always said one day I want to be a mayor. The odds were definitely against me, but I've been able to persevere and prove those who may have questioned my age, my race, that I can achieve and I can accomplish. We're showing that collaboration can take place and that we can all make this UK our home. So I think for anyone who may be out there feeling unsafe, reach out to organisations like this, try and join, get involved and see how you can create a community. I think community is very important. It should be at the centre of anything and everything that people do. So knowing that you have people around you who can make themselves feel safe, you can also feel the same way.
If you look at Nigeria at 65, in terms of governance, so much changes still required. We still need a lot of improvement in the country. But for Nigerians as people, oh my God, we are making waves worldwide. If you look at Nigerians, the best doctors in the world, the best Afrobeats in the world, the best of engineering in the world, science. I'm a professional myself, working in the bank in the UK here. So we are the best in every field. So Nigerians are great people globally.
Full interviews and extended coverage from the celebration will be available on our website and digital platforms. And finally, back to the Femi Otedola Book Club hosted by the Motherland Hub. The session closed with a round of quickfire reflections as young leaders shared the one lesson they learned from making it big.
I'm definitely excited to read and reread the book and just educate yourself on, great stories from people who look like you, who have a similar background to you, and just, be inspired. I know we spoke about today a lot about kind of reinvention, and I know you spoke about you pivoting, which kind of, I feel like they're the same thing as well. And sometimes it's just, I just think about it, if you're kind of in a car and one route is blocked, you still want to get to the route, but you've just gone another way. So it doesn't mean that you've failed in your journey. It just means that you've gone another way. So I think, not being afraid to pivot, and just educate yourself on how you can be successful. Don't be afraid to share your failures as well. I think is extremely important. And then just have audacity. That's the only way you're gonna make it big.
So many people can look at this book and think that privilege played a huge part in the success of this book. But I think we have to remember that we have things now that he didn't have. Things that accelerate the pace at which you can have success. Streamers did not really exist in this time, and we're seeing people go from 0 to 1 million followers in 30 days. And at the end of the day, being able to have that audience penetration, being able to get the message out there is how you win. And we have to take this moment in time very seriously, because if we don't, there's a shift happening. And if we miss this shift, there is a big likelihood that our community will be left behind and we won't be able to accelerate. We talked about AI a little bit earlier. The pace at which that is accelerating, we need to be taking the lessons from this book. And again, maybe you're not in oil, maybe you're not in cement, but you could be in an industry like fintech, AI, beauty that is accelerating at a pace where you can shift what success looks like in our community.
What's really interesting is you could take this book as someone that's never done entrepreneurship or never considered entrepreneurship, and it's coincidentally or maybe by choice structured along the sort of organizational life cycle, which is how you go from startup to growth to maturity, and then you need to reinvent yourself or you die, right? So it's incidentally the steps or the chapters in the book are structured in that way. So for someone coming in without having done anything related to entrepreneurship, it's a great starting point, because you go on that journey in a very relatable way, in a way that you can see in your environment. You can understand the necessity for diesel. Like everyone has seen generators and fuel queues. You can conceptualize, okay, like this is a proper demand, and someone was able to service that demand, and as such, consequently, was able to make quite a bit of money.
I fell in love with building things and creating new things from listening to stories. We need more stories. My opinion is that this is hopefully the start of a lot of really exciting African entrepreneurs, business leaders, people who are our leading politicians that we respect a lot, sharing more of their stories, being honest, being vulnerable, kind of showing us these are the things that I got wrong. And these are the things I want the future and the next generation of people that, as you say, have more tools in our disposal to learn from quicker. And when we're young, we can fail faster, we can break things, and then we can rebuild them quicker than a lot of people in their 60s can even start putting things up. But we need to learn more and more, as we go. And we need to also find, I think, creative ways, really exciting, engaging ways to tell and share stories.
I learned a lot from the parts of the book I've read. Particularly, there's this thing I coined from it throughout the first 100 pages, which was trust is currency. And knowledge gives you an edge. And then the third thing was make your life simple. Because in a lot of times when we are building things, we are looking for I need to be creative, and they've mentioned, innovation isn't some ingenious idea. It's that thing that you've noticed this could work better. Like when he mentions when the oil tankers came into his house, his residence, and he was pissed off, take it out. And then when he came back, he didn't have how to get everything around, but he was like, I could do this better. And through the book, I see how trust is currency. He mentions integrity a lot. And it also mentions networking. That's something that is subliminally drilled into you here in the Ivy League schools and the Russell Group schools. Subliminally, they are forming networking events. They are making you go for these events. And he talks about them. He's like, you need a community. You can't do it all by yourself.
The full discussion is also available to watch online. Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today on this week's show. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.